The 1980s car phones were a fascinating piece of technology, especially when you consider where we are now with mobile phones. To understand how they connected to telephone lines, we need to break down their operation a bit. Car phones in the 1980s were essentially an early type of mobile phone. They didn't use telephone lines in the conventional sense, but instead connected via radio signals to a network of land-based transmitters and receivers, also known as cell towers. Analog cellular technology. Back in the 80s, the technology was based on analog signals, specifically the Advanced Mobile Phone System, AMPS. When you made a call from a car phone, the signal would be transmitted in analog form to the nearest cell tower. From there, it would be routed through a network of towers until it reached the cellular network switching center. The switching center would then connect the call to the public switched telephone network, PSTN, which is where your conventional landlines and other phone connections existed. How calls were made. 1. Initiating a call. You'd pick up the car phone and dial the number, just like you would on a landline. 2. Signal transmission. The phone would then send a signal to the nearest cell tower or base station. These base stations were usually spread out to cover a large geographic area. 3. Channel assignment. The base station would assign a specific frequency or channel for your call. 4. Routing the call. Your call was then routed through the cellular network to the appropriate switching center. From there, it would connect to the recipient via the PSTN. Challenges and limitations. Cell towers were spread out much more sparsely than they are today. This meant that coverage was often spotty, especially in rural areas. Also, because these systems were analog, the call quality was nowhere near what we have today with digital technology, and calls were more susceptible to interference and eavesdropping. Evolution over time. The initial car phones were quite bulky, with some of the equipment actually installed in the trunk of the car. The handset itself looked like a beefed-up version of a traditional landline phone. Over time, the technology miniaturized, leading to the mobile phones we have today. If you ever get the chance to look at one of these old systems, they are marvels of engineering, a testament to the ingenuity of the engineers of the time. Telling that to people now often draws a wide-eyed stare, considering most folks can hardly remember life before smartphones. So, while they didn't connect to telephone lines directly, they utilized analog cellular networks to bridge that gap, managing to bring the dream of mobile communication one step closer to reality.